Hi, it's Amanda. Welcome to my channel. We have invited my mother for the next video in mine and Christina's social commentary series. Today we will talk about bold hair choices. When it comes to hair in general, and not just black hair, your choices can have so many implications and even impacts. Social, political, a show of solidarity in some cases, necessitated by medical need, general self-expression, and the list goes on. The three of us have navigated multiple stages, and I'm sure many of you can relate as well, and we would love to hear your story as well. You're very political, you're fashion-forward, gregarious, known to join in protests at times, and the like. You expressed yourself through fashion, no doubt, but you also do so with your hair. On election night, you came to me very excitedly after you saw the image of Ayanna Pressley with a shaved head for the first time. Why were you so excited to tell me about it?
AOC had posted that the squad had been reelected, and so in posting it, she had the 4 pictures, and that's when I first saw Ayanna Pressley with a bald head, and I was like, that's so crazy, like you could actually do that in Congress. The funny thing was that because I've said so many times, oh, a shaved head is no big deal, like I shave my head, like it's, you know, it's
I
not
never
even like a
agreed with
big
that.
thing.
Neither did I, neither did your father.
So it was interesting because I realized that I think that the big thing was that it was exciting because, you know, on election night we were all so tense, like, please say that Biden is going to win. And seeing this post of a bald black woman being voted into Congress, granted, she had already been there previously, but I mean, it was a big deal when she was elected because we had more black women in positions of power in Congress in general. And she had the, what did
Senegalese twist, I think is what she had.
The twist.
That was like her signature.
It was, yeah. So then, but then seeing the bald head, I was like, wow, this is like, I feel like maybe 2020 is going to take a good turn. The fact that people would re-elect somebody if it was just a fashion statement. I found out that she had alopecia, and then we ended up watching 2 things about it. And the interesting thing about that, again, was that the first piece that we saw was a news piece where people seemed to be kind of confused about what was going on, and they were like, oh, but you know, there's this thing called the Crown Act, so she can do what she wants.
And they found the only like non-white person in that panel to be like, oh, and you know, you can relate to this, or something about like, you know, because of the Crown Act, so you know, tell us about that. And she was like, yeah, the Crown Act. It was a panel of like, you know, white men. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, here's a woman, she's not white, so she must know about it. And it's about that. Whereas this was really like a medically necessitated thing. She had alopecia. This had nothing to do with the Crown Act. We can't connect everything.
No. I came across something on The Root, which deals with black political issues. And they did a whole story on her coming out that she had alopecia and the whole process of black hair being political and how she managed first going natural and then eventually having to shave all her hair off. And it was jarring to me because I realized because they said it, so I guess I heard them reminding us that hair is political, and I think I realized that
literally in this, because she's a politician. So I mean, she's in the epicenter of politics.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. And I guess there's also like, and we talked about like, you know, obviously in a corporate setting, when you choose certain hairstyles, there is that impact. And I guess that's like the ultimate corporate setting to be in Congress, where you're representing people and you have to get votes. So she doesn't have the flexibility to just decide that she's going to shave her head because she wants to, and she had to come out and give an explanation.
And outside of that, before she shaved her head, as I understand from the interview, she would get letters from like little black girls, like, you know, them showing support and being so happy that they had a congresswoman with braids, for one thing, like, you know, having someone in a position of power with such a, you know, stereotypically black hairstyle. And then she kind of felt bad to then go with the shaved head because she felt like she was letting them down. But I mean, this was medically necessitated. It was not her fault. But she went through her own...
Growing up in Barbados, I know you people will say this is irrelevant, I was a politician's daughter. And as such, I was supposed to be very conservative. I remember when I first got an afro, my mother was terribly upset. I came home with a big afro, and she says that means what is this black power thing? Because this was the early 70s. Black power had come in the 60s, and like most conservative Barbadians, my mother was very much against it. So when her daughter came home from the university with a big afro, it was troubling to her.
Just to defend us, I don't think that's irrelevant at all.
Yeah,
I'd actually never even heard this before. This is very relevant.
You never asked
the conversations
me.
we're having.
Well, yeah, because we've never discussed hair before.
Yeah, so in this case, what becomes personal was also seen as political because it was personal that she had alopecia, but because of who she was, it could have been seen as a political statement. Because when look at Christina's reaction, she first saw her with this squad and saw her bald head and was taking it as a fashion choice and thinking, my goodness, this is political because here is a politician with a bald head. What is she saying? Because a bald head is seen as being very avant-garde. It's very out there. You would not see a conservative corporate Brooks brother with a bald head. So it could have been seen as political until it was explained as personal and a physical need.
That's true, because in the Black community, a shaved head can mean so many things. I mean, obviously it can be because you have some illness, you know, if you're going through chemotherapy and you lose your hair. You see a white woman with a bald head, it's likely chemotherapy. But you see a Black woman, is it a statement? Is it just like a hairstyle? Is it just she felt like doing it? Is she doing a big chop? Like, is she trying to transition to natural hair? Is that why she's bald?
Yeah.
So there's just so many reasons, which I guess is why you need to do that research. But this was not her choice. She misses her hair. You know, it's actually, it was a very sad story. I know that she mentioned that the last of her hair fell out the night of impeachment from Trump. So instead of her being able to stay home and deal with, you know, the fact that she just lost all of her hair because of her role in Congress, she's in the spotlight, she's out there, she can't even deal with that on her own. So instead of her being able to, you know, mourn the loss of her hair, she had to go out there and give her vote. And so she just slapped on her wig and she went out there, because it's tragic to just, no choice of your own, lose all your hair from one day to the next. I mean, I know it was a progressive thing, but like, she knows the day that she lost all of her hair.
And again, looking at it from a Black point of view, I grew up in a conservative Black society, and I remember I was always told that her hair is a woman's beauty. This is in the Bible. And so chances are, if she comes from a conservative Black society also, she would also have seen her hair as her beauty. And I noticed in the video that you girls showed me, she always had lots of hair. It was big hair. She had the Senegalese twist, lots of hair, and then the hair that was kind of crinkly.
Yeah, that's her main wig. She called it her OG wig.
Her OG wig. Again, lots of hair. So this, I get the impression this is a woman that loves lots of hair, and then all of a sudden to overnight have it taken away from you and she's got no hair. That has got to be devastating. Think about the body image. I mean, there are so many things that are inherent in that. This poor woman.
So the thing that I found particularly interesting is because I had a very similar experience, and when I shaved my head, there was a period of time I had a roommate, and every time I would go into the shower to wash my hair would be on the wall, it would be in the bath, it would be on the floor, and I had this constant horrible thing. Every time I would shower, I would have to go and I would try to clean off my hair, but my hair kept falling out. And so eventually I said, okay, let me just shave it all off. I didn't feel sad about it. I had an afro at the time and I was like, okay, if my hair's falling out.
But then like, yours was in response to medication as well. So it was the same kind of thing, because that's when you shaved your hair, I thought.
Very often, like, you'll see a scene in the movie when that happens where somebody is on chemo and their hair falls out and it's this really sad thing to have to shave it. For me, I'm saying I wasn't upset. I just said, okay, it's falling out, I'm going to shave it. Because for me, it was a hairstyle that I was able to, it was another hairstyle for me to try. So it was very interesting watching her story, because I got to hear the story of somebody, to understand that pain that you would feel. And like you said, it is permanent. That is a huge difference as well. For me, if I couldn't grow my hair back right now, I wouldn't care, because it's a hairstyle that I am happy with. So it was very eye-opening to hear somebody struggle, but also to have gone through a situation of waking up and seeing hair falling off and having to deal with that sort of loss.
It is crazy for me to hear that perspective, though, because I guess we are very different. We have very different styles. If my hair were to fall out, I mean, it would be absolutely devastating for me. And it would take me a very, very long time to get out of it. When I even had to transition to natural hair, that for me was a huge change, because I had always had relaxed hair. I talked about this in so many videos. I loved my relaxed hair. It was like mid-back. It was healthy. It was, you know, it was this, it was that. But then after having my miscarriage, I was terrified of having another miscarriage. And while my miscarriage was not caused by a relaxer, I decided that I was going to go completely green, like a completely healthy, completely this, completely that. And because there is speculation that a relaxer, because of the formaldehydes in it and all that, you know, they're not the safest things to do. I decided I'm not doing them anymore. And if I'm going to be doing this for 9 months versus getting a relaxer every 8 weeks, like, what am I going to look like? Which is when I went to YouTube and you know, found out about the whole process and actually got excited about it. But my initial reaction going from having long straight hair to having, I don't even know, like I didn't know what my hair was going to look like. And as you mentioned, like working in a corporate environment, like what was the response going to be? And as I mentioned, there have been responses like people regularly making comments about my hair. Even just like acknowledging it, like we don't need to acknowledge my hair like on a random business call. It was traumatizing for a very small amount of time, because I then started getting really excited seeing what natural hair could look like on YouTube, because I didn't really see it in my life, in like my personal life. It's crazy to hear about someone being forced to shave their head and being okay with it. And Ayana, she was not okay with it.
When she shaved her head, it wasn't like a big shock. Like when I was a teenager, if I had shaved my head, I think my mother would have gone mad. I was relatively conservative.
Did you see bald people growing up? Like, did you
No,
ever
you're
see
kidding.
that? I guess, okay, in
People in
Barbados,
those
you know,
days,
people
it wasn't
were
a
very
thing.
conservative. They were not.
Even for a man to be bald, like there was that famous movie actor Yul Brynner, and internationally, Yul Brynner was seen as, it wasn't a thing. So, and I remember there was there's a calypso. I see the devil. His head is clean as a whistle, and no, that's a Mister. He shaved his head like Yul Brynner. You see, and so it was. People were laughing at it. It was something you made fun of in a calypso.
The reaction, like shaving my head, it still makes me angry now that like the response was to say so many negative things to me about shaving my head. So I never even had the opportunity to say, by the way, I shaved my head because this horrible thing is happening, because everybody
You never saw it. You never said it. This is the first time I've heard this.
It's interesting because for me, I always think about the fact that, like, yes, hair is just hair, and it has obviously it has its impact on you, but I'm always thinking there's so many things happening in the world to take the time to have a huge conversation about the fact that somebody chose to shave their head. To me, it just felt like that, and especially because the thing that was happening is that I'd lost my eyesight. I was on medication that was damaging my body. All these things were happening. So in the context of that, shaving my head was not the biggest deal. The biggest thing was getting my eyes back, getting my health back, getting my job back, getting my life back. But it's just interesting that hair is such a thing that people can get so, sidetracked by it. Like, look at Ayanna Pressley. She's done so many things in Congress, right? But she had to do this whole interview with The Root talking about her hair, standing up, like, you would never see a man having to get up there and have that kind of conversation and give this explanation about, granted it was a painful journey for her, but it's just interesting that the impact, the toll, and the explanations that are required. To give more context though, this was the second time that I'd shaved my head, because the first time I shaved my head, it was not because of medication, but it's more the reaction the second time that was more of an issue, because it was a revisiting and anger and it's just, again, it's very interesting, just the anger that will be associated with hairstyles, and specifically with a shaved head. Like when I dyed my hair purple back when I had really short hair, and my father told me that if I ever do that again, I can't ever come back in the house. And it's just, and hair is huge. Like your whole platform
hair
is
is
talking about
huge.
Hair.
Fashion statements are huge. Like, I'm sure fashion statements have probably even started wars. It's very possible.
Talking about your father, when we were dating, I also I cut my hair really short into an afro. My hair was shorter than his, and I remember his comment, "You look like a bare neck fowl." That wasn't.
How did you feel about it? I assume you didn't care, though.
I didn't
You
care.
take things
Because
in
you would say
stride.
the same thing to somebody else.
You would say the same thing to someone else.
Yeah.
So you watch the news all the time. So
Yeah.
you saw Ayanna Pressley with the
Yeah.
shaved head probably well before Christina did. Did you have any kind of reaction, or did you wonder what happened, or did you just take it in stride?
I just took it in stride. Look, I'm
you
Christina.
literally saw her from one day to the next with long hair.
I'm Christina's mother, okay? I used to visit her in Brooklyn when she lived there, and you go through Brooklyn and you see people with hair down to their butts. You see people who are bald. You see Senegalese twists. You see everything. So I just figured, okay, so she's.
I guess in this
Brooklyn girl at
situation, the
heart.
difference is that she's a conservative person in Congress.
Yeah.
So it's not like you took some person from Brooklyn, walking around with a certain.
I expect to be surprised by people.
One thing I was saying about seeing that video is that I felt kind of betrayed by myself, that when I saw her with the shaved head, that I had to do all this investigation to find out what the story is, because many people had asked, ask me why I shaved my head. And I would always think, it's really none of your business. What a crazy question to ask. It's like, if it is just a fashion statement, it's just my fashion statement. You don't have to have an explanation for what your fashion is. But then I realized, here I was Googling to try to find out why she did it.
She like dropped everything she was doing. She sat down on a random chair, a random computer chair, and took out her laptop, and I didn't see her for the next like 15 minutes because she was doing all this like
yeah. And I think it was two things. Number one, it was the excitement of potentially having somebody in Congress who was able to just come in, shave her head, no big deal, get reelected.
And you asked if it was even okay.
Exactly.
You asked if it was allowed.
It wasn't allowed. And number two, I think it's also because there's a huge thing when you start a job and you look a certain way and then you make this bold decision in the middle of a job. And I think that's very much what it's tied to. Kind of having to give a heads up to your company, whatever your company is, that you're about to make a bold decision with your hair. It's very interesting.
And then having to field questions. Because I was just like my nanny a couple of weeks ago, she was looking at like, Nick and I do like photo stuff for like Mother's and Father's Day. So I have placemats on my kitchen table. And I mean, in all those pictures, I have my long relaxed hair, and our nanny was looking at it and she said something about like, your hair was long and beautiful before. Why are you wearing it so curly and different now? And it was just, the question really bothered me. I mean, obviously, because it's like, first of all, that's insulting. It's playing like your hair was long and beautiful before. What is this? And I don't feel that way. I actually literally love my hair, and I'm in a transitional period right now. I'm growing out my hair. But the fact that someone can be so bold and so rude as to ask someone a question like that, it bothered me because it was just, I don't think I even really answered her. I was just kind of like, But,
no, you did it with something.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's the kind of thing that you have to accept that people are going to ask you questions like that. I might have been in the past a lot more judgmental. I don't want to say that I am right now because I feel like I've pretty much let go of all the judgmental when it comes to like fashion and hair and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't start that growth until I started my channel, until I started learning about natural hair, until that. I feel like if Christina had long hair at this point and then shaved her head, I would actually be like, oh, well, that's interesting. Like, why'd you do that? But I wouldn't be like, oof, why did you do this? Why does what she does to her hair have any effect on me? Whereas in the past, I might have been annoyed by it.
I think that we should also think about who is doing it. Had Jasmine shaved her head, you would have had a woof reaction because Jasmine is a regular conservative. Jasmine is a conservative person. So it depends on who is doing it. So I think that Christina shaving her head was something that you were able to get your head around, wrap your head around, more so than if your other sister had done it.
Yes, Jasmine wouldn't shave her head, so she's not relevant in this conversation. Christina did shave her head, and whether it's because that's what she's like, I'm talking about my reaction to it.
Oh.
Depending, no matter who the person is. Christina decided to shave her head, and yes, it might not be surprising, but I didn't like it because it was so like out of, I'm a conservative person. It's not a conservative move to shave your head and then, dye it purple, like that kind of thing. Like and I'm just saying, I have become a lot more sensitive, a lot more liberal, a lot more accepting since I started my own natural hair journey. It's just crazy the impacts that doing something like this is having on me, because I feel like I have changed a lot since I started transitioning to natural hair.
Yeah.
Even more so now that I don't even have relaxed hair. Like, I'm just so much more of an open person, not just regarding hair, just like in general. I'm just like a lot less judgmental, and like I've become a better person. I'll admit it. I mean, I don't mean to say that I was a terrible person before. I've always been like a generally good person, but as a generally conservative person who grew up in a conservative environment, I have, as you can see, I have at least a very conservative mother. I have a very conservative father. Christina has always been very different than all of us, pretty much, and I have been more like them. But since my transition to natural hair, I am more in the middle. I understand Christina now, or at least I accept her choices, but I also understand your perspective, but at the same time try to bring you over to my, camp and have you be less judgmental. And I just feel like there's just so much room for growth, and people just need to grow.
I don't think I'm judgmental. It's just,
you are
unfortunately, it's NIMBY.
When Ayanna Pressley shaved her head, did you see the reaction to the news? Were people before, or did she?
But the first time I saw her with a shaved head, I didn't know who it was. Yeah. And then, so I didn't hear the big announcement, but then like as someone who watches the news, I discovered that she'd shaved her head, and I never questioned it.
You didn't know, when you found that out, you didn't find out because she had alopecia?
No, I just figured.
That's surprising that they wouldn't have mentioned that.
So after I got accustomed to seeing her with a shaved head, I never heard this big thing about her having alopecia. Maybe I just learned about that when you told me a few days ago. I don't know.
So it wasn't covered in the media from your perspective?
From my perspective, no, because I was just looking at the politics, and so I would see these things, and people weren't really talking about her hairstyle, about her new look, because this probably happened immediately after she did it.
I mean, I find that surprising.
Yeah, well, they probably did initially.
Yeah, but you would have heard
not-
about it. You would have seen
Who
it.
knows what was happening in my life at that point?
You were probably watching the news.
Well, this speaks to what I was saying before, that the funny thing is that she had to come and do a news statement where the way that you processed it is the way everyone should have processed it, in that, okay, her hair is different, next. Because like you said, she's talking about how she did this on impeachment night when there were bigger things in the world to assess, and yet she still had to do multiple videos talking about it. So,
and that's obviously how it affected me. I just saw it as her fashion choice.
You are very oblivious.
Yeah,
So
but
I think
I
it actually has a lot to do with that.
When I made that really drastic shortcut, my daughters asked me if I wasn't afraid that their father would break up with me. I love Shakespeare, and I remembered in one of his sonnets he says, "Love is not love which alters when it alterations finds." And this is a sonnet that I used at my wedding. So I did not expect my boyfriend to not love me or not like me or not be attracted to me because I look different. Because that would not be love, and I figured it was love. Hey,
Attraction and love are two different things. So it was a reasonable question, and plus he was young.
Yes, but
you were
love
still
is not
dating.
love which alters when it alterations finds. We're
Okay,
not
I
talking
understand.
about attraction. We're talking about love. I wasn't just dating him. It wasn't like a fly by night thing. We were in a relationship, so I didn't expect him not to love me because he did not
He didn't
like
love
the
you
way.
anymore.
But
I asked
some
about his
people-
reaction.
Oh, his reaction. Oh, who cares?
He
about
didn't
his
like it.
reaction? He didn't.
I mean,
he didn't
yeah.
like it. But I didn't expect him to break up with me. Christina shaved her head, but I love her because she's my daughter. I wish that she hadn't shaved her head. So again, getting back to this thing, it would be interesting for your viewers to say, did anyone lose their boyfriend or lose a relationship because they had a drastic hair change?
Yeah, that's a good point. So tell us about any bold fashion or hair choices that you have made in your life and other people's reaction to them. Have you actually had to make any hair choices based on, illness or something related? Thanks for watching. If you like my content and haven't done so already, please subscribe, like, comment, and share, and I'll talk to you in my next one. Thanks, and have a good one.